Welcome back, everyone, to the VIBE EDU podcast. As I've got Kim Gameroz, TJ Vari, Mitch Weathers, and myself, Joshua Stamper, back for a second mailbag. And this is where we have an episode where we are seeking questions from the listeners about previous episodes, topics, series. And Kim is our person that has all of our questions for today. So with that, I'm going to throw it your way, Kim, and you can kick us off with the first scenario question. Mitch, you good?
I
know. I'm listening intently.
We always talk about TJ, but I think it's Mitch today.
What did I do?
Yes.
I'm good.
What's this? Yeah. What's the thing with the hands, Kim, that we always say?
Oh my God. I can't. Mitch, your sound shields, are they okay? And then your fingers.
They are. Right? Everything's good. My finger's broken, but it's fine.
All right.
Come on. I'm waiting for this question already.
Okay. So the question that I received was from a teacher, an incredible teacher who has been so committed to weaving in social emotional learning very intentionally in her classroom. And we've talked about TAG, right? Thoughts, action, goal. We talked about class goals. We talked about individual goals. We talked about systems that run your classroom. And this teacher is doing all of that. Okay. So this is coming from this teacher. Okay. She says, okay, trying not to freak out, but I just got back. And last week when I had a sub because I was sick, he said he's never coming back because of how awful they were, and particularly one kid and all this stuff. And it was a little harsh, but it sounded like they, meaning the students in the class, took advantage. And then this week I come back and out from a sub, and the sub says that first day was really rough. And so she started the second day with a class meeting. Mind you, I have what's expected when a substitute teacher is on the board. We did that before I left. And she said they were so out of control that nothing was working. And there was too many of them talking and off task for her to feel like she could give out individual consequences or conversations. And the watchdogs, so I don't know if you're familiar with this, but sometimes they have dads that will be, on the campus. So they call them watchdogs, and they'll kind of support, have conversations with kids. And the watchdog, the parent volunteer, came in and said this was the most disrespectful group of students he's ever seen. So I don't know what to do with that this morning. And I'm so disappointed because we had so many conversations before I left, because last week was really hard for the sub. And I was so confident that they were going to be great. And it's kind of a disaster. So what kind of advice would you give this teacher?
A hug first.
Oh.
A hug.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. That's just, we've all,
I've had that.
Speaking for myself,
written.
I've been there.
Yeah. What was the hardest for me was when I was pulled from being a teacher to be a sub administrator for a whole month. And the worst class that entire time, that whole month, I had to visit my own classroom almost every day to give them a talk as to what the expectations were. But it was the last month of the year that I was pulled. So, I mean, talk about like relationships built, trust, all that kind of stuff was already there. And then I was pulled away from that. So just so this teacher knows, like, Mitch, you said it's happened to you. It's happened to me. TJ, Kim, I'm assuming it's probably happened to you before getting a pretty nasty letter from a sub saying I'm never coming back.
Yep.
Yeah. I do have a few things that just popped into mind. Is one, it's not that it's inevitable, but it's not necessarily ideal, depending on who's in the room, the kids, when there's any type of inconsistencies. So that's totally outside of the teacher's sphere of influence. We all get sick. That's why we have sub days. We all have other reasons we're pulled out of the class. But if sounds like at least one, but maybe more of those kiddos, it's kind of a hold your breath moment anyway. So some of that dysregulation can just be lack of consistency. It doesn't excuse it by any means, but I have a few things I want to say, but that's one for sure, that it's just kind of part of part of the deal
Mhm.
sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah,
And I will say this one other thing, then you go, TJ. It didn't come up, and this teacher is very gracious and with that feedback. I mean, it was more what I heard in that is as you're reading, Kim, it's like sadness as opposed to anger. I'm sure
Right.
there's some anger
Right.
too, but just like heartbreak. And one factor that she didn't weave in, and it's not about the watchdog because that's a parent and hopefully that's all, but subs can be crazy people. And they can make the whole thing come off the rails, and then it's the feedback's like, these kids are horrible. I'm not saying that's what happened, but we've all had these negative feedback experiences, but we've also left very clear sub plans that are clear but also simple.
Mhm.
And then you come back and you're like, how did you interpret what I left? And this is what you did. Like, you went and did this and it screwed everything up.
Yep.
That still doesn't excuse student behavior, but those are just two thoughts I had.
Mhm.
Sorry, TJ, go ahead.
No, I have a ton of thoughts about it. I mean, one is similar to what you said. Like, if you know the substitute and you know the substitute, you've used that substitute before and you have like access to subs who you can request, I take those notes like very seriously.
Mhm.
But if you don't know the substitute and you've never used that sub before, I ignore a lot of that, especially when they can't give me individual names of kids.
Mhm.
They're just saying the whole group was so bad. I just don't believe that. There's got to be kids in there who didn't act up. Like, we think about whole groups of kids all the time. We're like, this class period or this group, graduating class or whatever. And it's like, I just don't define a group of kids like that. They're all different. And I'm sure there were several of them that did exactly whatever the sub said. The other thing, teachers shouldn't feel like they can't take a day off, but we also shouldn't think that the lesson is going to continue in its general form when we're not there. So like, I like to see sub plans that are a little more relaxed, a little more fun, a little more student led, a little, something that is kind of auxiliary to the main lesson, not necessary, but could be adjacent to what they're learning versus I'm on day 1, subs on day 2, I'm on day 3. That doesn't work. And the last thing I'll say is I feel for the subs too, though. I was a permanent placement substitute teacher when I started as an educator. So that meant that I reported to work in a high school every day and I didn't know what I was going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
It was really good training ground. Like, I showed up and they were like, you're math, 9th grade math today. One time I was a culinary arts teacher for a month, which, I was a restaurant manager before I was in education. So it was like, the food was so good. CTE school, the kids would make food and but you go into a room. I learned a lot about what not to do as an educator when I was a permanent placement substitute. You go into one room and it's like, wow, these kids don't even need me. Like, this teacher set this up from the day before and they're rocking and rolling. And you go into the next room and it's like total chaos.
Yeah.
And some of that, I've also, before I actually started subbing just to see if I wanted to teach. And we all know subbing is not teaching. So I don't know why. It's more than anything, I think I was saying, do I really want to hang out with kids all day? And I was like, yes, I got this. Like, I love this. And I always had a thought for myself, like, and I would tell my students, like, if you want to know if a teacher can manage a class, then show up on the day the sub's there. Right. That'll tell you a lot about their routines and right. But that's not always the case, because I'd show up and I was like king of routine. Right. I mean, my sub plans where the kids already know what to do. Like, literally, like, just stay here and breathe. Don't leave, please. Here's a snack and just stay here all day. That, like, basically, and it would still come off the rails. Sometimes it was a crazy sub. Sometimes it was just kids, like, being kids. So I would also, I just want to give this teacher a big hug. Respect. But if you do
Listen-
know some specific kids, I think it might be time for a parent.
I want
Student
to talk to the leaders too, just
Yeah.
real quick, like school leaders, principals who are listening, please have a program of work, whether you're at the district level or school level, for substitutes.
Yep.
Training for substitutes, professional development for substitutes, regular substitutes, a different type of pay for somebody who's doing long-term subbing versus short-term subbing.
Yep.
And if I'm a principal, I want all the best subs that the district has available. So I'm going to treat them differently when they come to my school than they're going to get treated at the other schools,
Exactly.
even in the same district. Like my subs are going to get a sub packet that's going to have a snack in it. I'm going to get them free lunch from the cafeteria if they want it. Like I actually did all of that as a principal. And I had substitutes tell me, I only sub here.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Why not?
Yep. Well, that's what you want. You want the consistency that Mitch is talking about. And when you just have, willy-nilly coming in and just doing it for a day, and they have no context of your kids, or, they know nothing really about like the procedures and the routines and all that. I mean, every campus is different. And so when you get that person trained, like TJ's talking about, and then you had a consistency of like, we had subs in our staff photo because we wanted to treat them like everybody else. You are a part of our family, right? So come on in. And so we did all the things TJ was talking about because we wanted people to come back, and we wanted, because in a pinch, right, someone had a death in the family, if they leave in the middle of the day, we wanted to be able to call our 20 people that were here with us almost every day to sub and say, hey, can you come in for a half day? And they felt like they belonged to everybody else. And of course they would be like, yeah, I'll help you out. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Right. And so that's something as leaders, we got to do a better job of like building that consistency of subs. But also when we went around with the snack cart, we made sure we went to the subs first. They got first pick. We were trying to create this preferential treatment to them to make them feel as everyone else. And that was really important to us. The other thing I will say too is like, if it's someone that isn't one of those folks and they come in, I can think of an instance where we had a bunch of like PTA moms and they were like, hey, we want to help out. What can we do? Well, you know what? Cafeteria is really busy. We have 400 kids at a time in here. How about you just show up and you don't have to like do anything. You just walk around. You're just a presence. First day, mom pulls me aside. She's probably there for maybe 5 minutes and goes, how do you do this? I want to slap the shit out of all of them. And I was like, okay, maybe we can find somewhere else for you to go. And so we found her something to do in the copy room, not with the kids. But I think that mentality of like what school is and how kids should behave and how kids interact with adults, like everyone has their own perception of what that norm is. And if you haven't been in school for a while, or maybe you're multiple generations from the current student body, that may look different in your mind. And so when you're experiencing it, it just sets you off as these are all bad kids. This is horrible. I'm never coming back. And so I would just say that, especially right now, the student body typically is not going to think of you as an authority figure purely based on your age. That is something that is earned. And if that is not your perception, you're going to have a really tough time in those interactions with elementary, middle school, or high school, because you have something different than what's actual reality.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, real quick, I think there's an assignment that follows, even with kids who don't write a reflection. So like, let's say they're little kids and the next day I have stations. I might actually set up a station with me for a short period of the instructional time and say, let's debrief about what happened yesterday. Mm-hmm. And if they're older kids, I might say, look, and I'm always say, don't use names, but I just want you to tell me what happened. The sub said you guys didn't do a very good job. And so then with older kids, I would say, I want an individual reflection of what you contributed to yesterday, your productivity yesterday, what you thought about it, and what we could do differently, so that I don't get a note from the substitute like this in the future, and have them do a brain dump or a writing activity or a station and verbalize it. Because I want to hear from the kids, their perspective too. Some kid might say, it was wild and I walked out.
Well, I think and I know, Kim, let me jump in real quick and then I'll let you go. I think what you're saying, TJ, and it's really important, and maybe this is true of bigger kids, but maybe all, like, although it's like a free day, right? The sub's there. It's just not like you're saying this, a sub day, unless it's a person you know that you trust and you can talk to. And I love that idea. You know, I remember we had go-to subs and they're walking around campus. Kids are calling out their name just like they would if Mr. Weathers walked by, and they're shouting back at him. It's like, okay, you're part of this community. And although we need to temper our expectations, we need to have accountability for that day to some degree, because if not, then you're going to fan that flame of off-task behavior potentially, right? Like, well, it doesn't really matter. Like, there's got to be something there, whether it's hey, I'm going to have a station with my teacher tomorrow. And we've got to talk about this, and it's going to be anonymous, like whatever it is. So, like, for me, it would, like, you have to produce something from this, before I even leave, if it was a planned thing. So I think accountability, figuring out that, kind of volume on that. Can't be too much, but it also can't be turned all the way down.
Yeah. I think this teacher especially, but I mean, for sure, every single teacher in my community, teachers that I work with, and I want to believe in the majority of teachers out there across the country, they take it personally. They take it really personally when you get a note like that. It hurts you. It like hurts your heart. And then instantly we go into like solution mode and fix it mode. And what I told this teacher this morning was, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take a deep breath. And I like unboxed her. I was like, and then she even responded like right after. She's like, I'm taking a deep breath. Like, that was the very first thing that she said, because she needed that. Right. And then what I said was, you can't expect that an adult, a substitute, your administrator, even like any other teacher, even to be able to come into your classroom and be you, and to have those intentional conversations like you have them, and to use the language that you do and the systems that run your classroom. It's different, and you can't expect anything different. And so I said, you need to have a reflection, right? With the kids, we need to have during your morning meeting. But you're not like gonna stomp on them, and you're not gonna squash them, and you're going to have an intentional conversation that says, I get it. First, I get it. When I'm not here, I understand that it can be different. However, this is what's expected in this classroom. Go back to that. Like she said, that she had an anchor chart of what's expected, the behavior that's expected when a substitute was in there. Go back to that visual and then say to them, how are we going to move forward? What intentional goals can we set for ourselves so that we can work towards this growth? And I think that really sets us up for the next question from community, from teachers, which is, how are we holding kids accountable for all of this? Like, what are we doing, especially when it comes to social emotional learning? And this popped up because I had a Zoom with the teachers in my community, and we meet for 60 minutes, 1 hour, and I'm like off. And it had been 62 minutes, and then they're putting in the chat all the questions. And so this was one of them that popped up, because we were talking about goal setting, and we were talking about, how do you hold kids accountable for all of this? So thoughts on that?
I love the idea of students writing individual goals. In this circumstance, I don't know how this would fly in like with a 10th grader, but my personal goal for my behavior on a day that there's a sub, and now we have something we can look back on, and it might need to be an individual one-on-one, more accountability than reflection for a kid, but it might just be an anonymous review. Hey, pull out your goals, for when we have a subs the next day, like making that routine. I've never heard of anybody doing that, but I think that could be there's some agency in there for students, but there's also now something when we talk about accountability, it's not, as TJ said, the broad brushstrokes where you're all like off the walls, because that just is never, ever the case. It's easy to be in a classroom where students are off task and it just draws all of your attention and all of your focus. And if you can train yourself to step back, you're like, no, there's actually a lot of kids really paying attention and on task here. I'm just dealing with this. And so I can't expect a sub to do that. But yeah, the accountability piece, and bringing them in on the responsibility for how we act as a learning community. That's, I think, all ages.
Mhm.
And then I'd love to hear your thoughts, everybody, on, if there is, and it sounds like there may be a student where if you had to predict this is that kid's time to, go off the rails a little bit behaviorally.
Mm.
But if there are indications of individual students that did something, I know as a parent, I would want to know,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And it might be a situation that we're all working on already. And maybe this isn't the time for a parent meeting. Because ultimately, like you said, Kim, deep breath.
Mhm.
Kids are kids.
Mhm.
Try to let go, which is nearly impossible. You guys all know I'm a runner. I remember coming home, this is not an exaggeration, and going on like 2-hour runs because I could not like get it out of my system. And then I'd come home after that. Okay. It's just another day. And it really is,
Yeah.
but it's not easy.
Mm-mm.
All right, so since someone's talking, as far as the kid that Mitch is talking about, I would have a behavior plan specifically for that child in regards to sub days
Mhm.
and having that outlined. And then also, hopefully, there's a team of folks that are, because I'm assuming that this one child probably has a 504 coordinator or a special ed person, or like there's something else going on, that there's support somewhere else in the building that, maybe they're doing a check-in, check-out with, so whoever that safe person is for that child that's working with them within that plan, that there's a specific section just for subs.
Mhm.
And if maybe it's just like on that day when there is a sub, that child is with another teacher in that grade level that they feel like they have a good relationship and rapport, or maybe it's that they're working, and getting breaks every 30 minutes, or, fill in the blank as to what that child needs. But I think it's something that's being proactive of having a plan for them prior to, so that way it's setting the child up for success, but it's also setting up the sub for success. Because I mean, that sub doesn't know what are the triggers for that child, what is going to be the, if I yell at them, it's going to escalate the situation, and now we've got a huge thing where admin's there, and it's made the situation a whole lot worse, when I just thought it was like any other child, right? And I've seen that happen firsthand as an administrator, walk into a class and it's off the rails because they just didn't know and didn't have the adequate notes to say, this is a child that may get escalated quickly due to X, Y, and Z. And so the more it's laid out as far as a plan for that specific child, I think the better it's going to be for everybody.
Mhm.
I like that a lot, Josh. I think that that's super smart. We did that with a bunch of kids at the middle level when I was a principal. They just weren't going to do well with a substitute, no matter what grade substitute was coming in. I don't think that's a lack of accountability. I know somebody listening is going to say, yeah, but you just let the kid off the hook for their behavior with the sub. I totally disagree. This is an adult that's foreign to them. They don't know this adult. The adult doesn't know their routines, especially if it's a special needs student. They have a plan that is probably not going to be executed very well or known at all.
Mhm.
I would also say, because we got to get to the accountability part, but I will say I would do that with whole classes of kids as well. If you have a class that is generally unruly with their regular teacher, they're just not going to be great for the substitute. And so maybe there's a better structure. Somebody else pushes into that period, or the substitute gets a break or goes somewhere else during that period of instruction, and a well-known teacher in the school comes in for just that period, where they swap. Like a sub goes into a non-unruly classroom, and that teacher goes into, a well-known teacher in the school goes in. But I think, like, yeah, I'm 100%. I'm always 100%. But I think, having that plan for the individual, but also the class period. I'm not saying the whole day. I'm just saying sometimes we know period 4 is just not going to do that great with a substitute.
Mm-hmm. Can I, in terms of the accountability, because that's true, and I don't think that's like, that heavy of a game of Tetris to figure out, right? And that's secondary level. If you're self-contained, you're with them all day. That's a whole different thing.
Mhm.
But in terms of accountability, I would love to get your feedback on this, the three of you. But what I would tell the teacher is to be pretty transparent about how it's making me feel. Like my heart's broke, and I just not. There's a fine line here. This is not sappy guilt trip stuff either. It's like truly, right? There's one part expectation, one part I'm working really hard, one part we talked about this. And I just need you to know that this is how I'm feeling. And that's just part of this process too. So where do we go from here? I feel like that's got to be a part of the conversation as well.
Mm-hmm. You know, it brought me back to, we were talking about goal setting as a group last week with me and this group of teachers. And we were talking about how, especially for elementary, and Mitch, it'd be interesting to hear what you guys do with Organized Binder, but with like the workshop model that's really popular in elementary schools and teaching reading and writing, there is this method where you have a piece of paper and on one side it says strategies I'm working on, and the other side it says habits I have, and it's like while reading, while writing, whatever. But it could just be you personally, like your social and emotional behavioral goals. And we were talking about how you could have this piece of paper, right? Like one sheet. I'm just thinking like if it's one sheet of paper, just like that, right? And it says those headings, strategies I'm working on, habits I have on the other side. It's laminated, it's cardstock, so it's thick. And if you are a teacher where you're doing intentional goals with kids, I will blank so I can, or we can blank, like feel, supported and calm in the classroom, whatever that is. And you have these strategies written down and kids are reflective. I would have those kids pull out that strategy sheet and I would say, okay, this is what the sub had to say. Look back at your goals that you guys made for yourselves. Is that really a habit that you have now? Is it a habit, or does it need to be a strategy again? Keeping your thoughts in your thought bubble, keeping your hands to yourself, like those types of things, right? Staying in one spot instead of wandering around the classroom. Is it really a habit? Were you really sitting in one spot? Or maybe does it have to be a strategy again? And what are you going to do in order to meet that goal? So I think being reflective in that, and there is something about something tangible. Like I know, Mitch, you have like, is it the gold sheet? I want to say it's the gold sheet. That's like your goal setting sheet, right? I think that having kids go back to it and go, wait. I gotta reflect here. This really isn't working for me. And what do I really need to do so that I can have that living and breathing inside of me? I think that that's one way to do it. We also were talking about, I plugged Seesaw before, and I'm going to plug it again, just FYI, having kids record themselves on Seesaw and saying, right, the reflection, or this week I will blank so we can blank, right? And parents can hear that. Their parents with that individual journal, they're connected to it. Teacher can connect. Teacher and parents can comment and like it. That is also a great way to bring in. It's just not about the kid. It's we are your team and we've got you, right? We've got our arms around you, kiddo, and we're going to help you so that you can meet this goal also. I think that I like both those ways, but I want to hear, Mitch, what you do as far as your goal setting sheet too.
Before I say anything about that, is Seesaw, is there an ability, yet?
No,
Are they, is there a way to toggle that as a private conversation between kid, teacher, family, team, and then community where all kids see? So if that was the case, I would like to have part of that personal reflection, like stating the goal, is like, how does it make you feel?
Right.
This next day, like stuff happens, in life, and I'm not, you're not necessarily in trouble. I don't know what this one kid did, but just like, how's that feel?
Well, he's gonna write 1,000 sentences, Mitch. So he'll
on the
he'll
board
tell you how that's gonna like what his behavior was.
But even in Seesaw, if I'm the teacher, I could take a picture of our class goal and I could post that so that all parents can see it. And I could say something like, We had a note from our substitute that blah, 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 whatever you want to say, kindly, politely, whatever, I wouldn't go into depth of what the sub said. But as a class, we've decided that our class goal is blah, 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 right? And then be sure to click on your individual child's journal to see their individual goal and to hear them explain how they're going to work towards that this week. That is beautiful. I'm just like, that's like yummy.
That's beautiful. And it works, I would say, if it's routine.
Right.
Maybe it's not realistic every day. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But if that only happens in instances of chaos,
right,
then it's just not going to work. But if this is just routine, we reflect. Like I think of just a real quick, you asked about organized binder, and then to you, TJ. It is the goal setting. It's tab A. It's gold. We want students going for the gold, and it's one goal for a short period of time and a sub goal. So whatever it is, it could be behavioral, it could be academic, it could be whatever you want. The sub goal is how you get there, right? So whatever, I want to be successful in this class. And then this public conversation, we all talk about, okay, if that was the goal, what are things you do? What are things you heard of? What are things you know you should be doing? No wrong answers here. Let's just talk. And then kids can identify like, oh yeah, well, if I do all my homework, I'm more likely to, right, which didn't land in my class because I didn't give all of my much homework. But let's just say that's the case. They kind of, oh yeah, okay, great. How do you do that? And they're like, well, I'm just going to do all my homework. I'm like, well, I had you last year and you didn't do any homework. So what now? Right? Like I had kids, because you're doing it every 6 to 8 weeks. So it just had to be whatever that works for that kid. When I get home after school, I sit down at the dining room table, I do my work. I get home from work in the evening, whatever it is, tell me a time and a place. I don't want you to think, it's an action. We call it the daily task. They're seeing that every time they come into school or into class, but part of that reflection piece, the first step of the routine with organized binder, because it's all about establishing a predictable learning environment. First and last steps, so the beginning and end, opening and closer, are reflections. Mm-hmm. And so I can weave in, because we reflect anyway, my prompt could be, let's talk about, reflect. How do you feel about how it went with the sub yesterday? You know how I feel. I talked about it. What do you, or whatever it might be. So it's that mechanism. And then I'm reading those things on a weekly basis, not daily. And I can comment back and reflect. So that is part of the routine. But yeah, the goal setting has to be something that's, and the older we get, supposedly, you can have more time. That's what the research shows. But with the little kiddos, younger and younger and younger, it's like, it may even be hourly, daily, right? Mm-hmm. Where for, a ninth grader, it might be, we do this every 8 weeks formally, but we're looking at it every single day when we come in, right?
Yep.
So
there was also a teacher.
I love that answers your question. But.
Yeah, that was good. I was talking to a teacher this morning because I was like, you need to post how you used Seesaw for goal setting with your kids. She had, I want to say they were in second grade, and I think she's teaching first. But all the parents are Spanish speaking. So what do you do? And what she decided to do, and I don't know if this is the easiest way to do it, but I love it. She had them record videos of themselves speaking in English, right, about their goal. And then she posted to a private account, YouTube account. And then she could do the translations, and you can choose the language, right? And then from there, she linked it into Seesaw so the parents could see it and they could read it in Spanish. And I was like, this is beautiful, because now they can see, wow, my kid is reflecting on the weekly. She always did weekly, right? That's how she did it. Because a daily something in Seesaw like that, it could be a lot, especially for a little one. But for a fifth grader could easily do that. At the end of the day, every single day, they're always reflecting on their goal and posting it so their parents could see. Yeah, I think that's how we hold kids accountable. And I know we had teachers asking this too, which was, how do you guys show and progress monitor the growth? How do you show kids the growth? And I think that's part of it too, right? Being able to see, like, if it was the one piece of paper, look how many habits you have now. Look at all the habits that you have. This is amazing. The Post-it, right? We talked at VIBE EDU at the conference. We talked about brag tags. Look at all the brag tags that you have. Look at all that growth, right? That visual for them. And I think being able to, again, go back into my journal or my binder and look back at all of my goals and see my reflections, I think that's how we can show that growth as well.
And that works only if the teacher is reading the feedback that the students submit. Because what happens and where these routines and strategies ring hollow is kids are like, what the hell am I doing this? And I'm just like, it's like I'm just writing into especially if it's digital, it just disappears anyway for them. I'm not it's like no longer perceptively present.
Well, they start writing stuff in there too to see if you.
100%. Yeah. Even in that like organized binder, it's the weekly lifeline. It's the B page, and we begin and end at the same place, and it's a student reflection, but it's meant to be collected at the end of the week, not the end of the day, because that's an exit ticket and it's not sustainable. But at the end of the week, and you're reflecting on that. And to your point, Josh, even not digital, I think it's a little bit easier because it is. Like this whole idea of being perceptively present is key and something we need to talk more about when we consider digital in the classroom. But we taught in pods or teams, and the kids told me, they're like, all right, my English, I think I tell this story in book 1. I hope I do. If not, I'll tell it here. We were talking about it, and they're like, Mr. Weathers, you're not going to believe this, because they knew I had designed organized binder, but at the time the school had adopted it. So, kind of like a celebrity teacher or something, or most of the time it was just kids hated me because they, had to use this stupid binder. But they were like, you're not going to believe this. Mr. So-and-so doesn't read our reflections, and I was like, get out. It's your English teacher. If anybody's going to be reading what you wrote, then it's this guy. I'm like, how do you know? And they're like, we all kind of had a hunch, because no matter what we write, we get 5 out of 5. It's this score you get at the end of the week for these reflections. And so we all got together and we decided, talk about collective student efficacy. We decided we would write about the parties and the stuff we went to over the weekend every day for our learning logs. So the learning log's the ending conclusion, kind of like where you would normally have an exit ticket. And it's meant to be this kind of quiet couple-minute digest, like here's what was confusing, here's what landed with me, here's where I'm at, right, on this road to getting it. And they kept getting 5 out of 5 week after week. And what happened, I kind of covertly was just chatting with this teacher, and he had inadvertently just assigned that task to his TA. To just, okay, they're complete, TA doesn't care. TA is probably friends with half the kids, and was at the same party or something. And my point to him and any teacher, that's what I'm saying, the reading of those, whatever it is, or watching of it, if it's a video, it will not work if you're not putting in the time to read student reflections. And I would argue it's oftentimes better spent than grading classwork or homework. Listening to student voice and where they are and having them demonstrate or reflect. But it's easy to see that not as content, and so I'm not leaning into that. And I've just found over the years, if I can have a routine, if it's something we just do and I can use it for different reasons, and I read it and I comment, and cherry on top if the families are doing that, not within your realm of influence necessarily. But students know. They know if you're commenting, reading back, because you check in with them. You'll ask them about something. I think it would have been so great had he started reading them. And like, yo, how are the party this weekend? Standing at the door, like, hi. That's the fun stuff, right?
Yeah, that, especially with older kids, that's fun. The other thing that I was going to add, and I know there's nuance to this, and it's definitely when you're out, back to the substitute, when you know you're going to be out, this has been kind of said, but I want to underscore it, is to bring families into the fold. So there's no rule that says you can't email the families the night before and say, hey, I'm not going to be here tomorrow. I'm speaking to elementary, for example. Yeah, I'm not going to be here tomorrow. And so I would love for you to talk to your child about the things that we went over today in terms of my expectations with the substitute. We had a little part of our lesson today where we went over what our behaviors need to look like when we have a guest in the classroom. And I'd love for families to talk about that at home. And then, by the way, you're going to see your kid again before I am. So when they get home from school tomorrow, ask them how it went with the substitute. And if there's anything alarming or good that is extraordinary, let me know before I walk in the following day and ask them how it went with the substitute. There's a parent who receives that and doesn't send their kid to school.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that is a bad thing. I'm just saying there's a parent who goes, my kid's regularly off the chain.
Mm-hmm.
They were suspended from school last week,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sending them tomorrow.
Totally.
Well, and I want to.
That saves everybody a headache at the end of the day. And so there's pros and cons of what I'm saying here, but I think there's a way to incorporate some family time, some family reflection. And for little kids, they come home and you say, how'd it go with the substitute? I know Miss Gameroz wasn't in today. And they spill their guts. And maybe they say something that you do need to know about before the next day starts, and you email it. So that's how we partner with families versus kind of like doing this all with just the kid and the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I think that works at every age. And I think we have one more question, right?
But the nuance, I think we need to lean into that. I'm glad you said that this is nuanced. Depending on what you know about the family, and not everything's a blanket, send it home. You and Josh have both told stories of parents that you just want to make sure it's a healthy accountability for the kid, mm-hmm. and that they feel safe. But most of the time, I completely agree. And I don't know if you've all had this experience, but, and again, this might be my secondary, middle school, high school brain, but oftentimes I'd give the kid an opportunity, just me and the kid, like talking it out. This happened, whatever. And then if it did get to a point where I needed to bring a parent in, I remember many times a parent being like, why didn't they know about this? Like
100%
from the jump. I don't want my kid acting this way. I want to support you. And, but I think it's worth reiterating that it's nuanced, and that all comes back to relationships and knowing who's in your room and hopefully getting to know their families and figuring that out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably if you're a new teacher, what I said too is maybe not the best strategy, but I would say for sure a confident teacher who's confident in their work and confident in their relationships with families. I think that's always a good idea to let them know what's going on. Those were the questions I asked at parent-teacher conferences anyway. I can see the report card with all the A's and B's on it. Like, we're doing fine here. It's the other stuff that we need to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, and to the veteran piece too, TJ, if you've been there 8, 9, 10 years, this is probably like the third kid from that same family that's come through where you've already built that relationship. I can think of even just being on the campus for 4 years. I had sometimes 3, 4 different siblings every single year, and I knew those families backwards and forwards. And so I might just shoot them individually an email and just be like, hey, look, I'm going to be out, because I knew those parents specifically were the ones that would hold their kids to the fire. I already had a great relationship with them. They were out at the school a million times, and I could be way more candid with them versus maybe a family was there for the very first time and this is their first kid going through that school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I love the email. Like, I am in love with that idea, TJ, of the email before. I think that this teacher, the one that we've been talking about also, there will be a time again this school year where she will need to be out, or maybe she'll get sick again. Who knows? Maybe she'll come to the VIBE EDU pop-up or something, and she needs to miss a day. I don't know. But I'm thinking she would 1,000% email those families in that way that you just said, and it would be game-changing, I think, for her. So I think,
and
go ahead.
Can I say one thing to that? When it goes well for this teacher, be sure to celebrate that on the backside. But I would pump the brakes on how big celebration, because it shouldn't be something we celebrate that you're just behaving in a way that's polite. But to recognize that we're all on this growth, so it might be donuts. you get a donut, or I don't know, like, I don't know if I told you guys my strategy, like the classes that bothered me the most, that I just struggled to manage, I had to change the narrative. So I started telling them, like, through forced teeth, that they were my favorite classes. And I would bring them donuts on occasion, and things started changing. Like, they actually ended up being my favorite classes. They were fun. They, I was able to, kind of break down the behavior. But I think it's worth acknowledging, but I don't think it should be like pizza day, all that, whatever. It's got to be something that's just hey, we're on the road. We're making progress here. I appreciate that.
I would make that explicit too. So that would be on the front end as well, to the parents and to the kids. Yeah. Like, hey, listen, we didn't do so great with the substitute last time. So I'm not going to prompt the sub. I don't even know who the sub's going to be. But if I don't need to get a great report. I just need to get not a bad report. Mm-hmm. If I don't get a bad report, here's what we're going to do. And then I incentivize that. Because some groups will police each other. Like, dude, we're not going to get the donuts if you keep acting like that.
100%. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. TJ is 100% right there.
I'm always 100%.
Well, I'm proud of us because we did hit all three. I wanted the substitute one, the terrible feedback, holding kids accountable, and then also progress monitoring. How are you showing growth? And I think we hit all three of them. What I was thinking, Mitch, before you wrap it up, Josh, was you gotta, instead of fake it till you make it, it's make it till you make it. Mm-hmm. It is intentional steps that you take. It is intentional conversations that you have. It is the constant front loading and reflecting that changes everything. And you do that. You make it till you make it. So with that, I don't know. Josh, wrap it up.
Well, before we wrap it up, Kim, you talked about a VIBE EDU pop-up. Do we need to tease anything out?
Is that in Santa Rosa? Is that what we were talking? No? Okay, sorry.
Could be, you never know.
There's a few great spots there. I'm just saying.
I know. I did get a preview of what the pages are looking like in my book, Becoming the Bison, you guys.
How did you like it?
Oh my, it is. I mean,
I also got a sneak peek and I thought it was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I want to see. Can I interrupt you real quick? And then you go back right to this, because we got our my co-author and I got the draft covers options back.
Okay.
From Corwin for my second book today.
Oh, awesome.
And one of us is not happy. And I'm smiling right now, so I'll let you three figure out what that means. Anyway, Kim, I digress. Tell us more.
Well, I was just thinking, I just know we're getting closer to the book release, and with the book release will be a VIBE EDU pop-up. We're thinking out here in McKinney, Texas. We have a venue and all the things ready to rock and roll. So to be determined on the date, but everybody kind of like get ready, because the herd is running. We're running, baby.
All right, Kim, me and you got to meet up at the Aussie Grind again, where we had coffee and reminisce a little bit. Come on, that was awesome times. I miss my North Dallas people. So, all right. All that being said, if you have a question, let's say all the topics that we hit on today, I know they were kind of all related. If something else comes up that is in your mind that you want us to talk on, we are doing a mailbag after every single series. So make sure that you're putting that in the comments in YouTube and Spotify. If you're part of the Kim Gameroz, I don't know, cohort, group, community, what is the word I'm looking for? Then, of course, you can reach out to her. Tribe.
Herd, man. You don't know this by now?
Sorry. I need more coffee. So if you're in her community, of course, make sure that you're reaching out to her via Voxer, or I know you have a Facebook group, and there's a bunch of ways to get a hold of Kim. So we just appreciate the questions and the feedback and the scenarios that you present to us for these specific mailbags. We want you to keep sending us stuff. We love it so much. And of course, we will be coming back to you next week, although we are not going to tell you the topic yet. Have we even decided, Kim?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We'll release it here soon. So I want everyone on pins and needles as we are about to come back with a new series, 4-part series. And with that, I hope everyone has a fantastic week.